So, I want to welcome everybody to one of our sessions where we're going to talk about everyday work challenges. So, whether you're a leader, an individual, an entrepreneur, no matter what you're in, we're just going to talk about some of the challenges that we encounter. And we're going to try to look at it from multiple different vantage points. So, trying to bring it into a really practical perspective of how does this impact and apply to our lives and how can we use this? And also from a science-based perspective. So my name is Jessica Tietjen. If you don't know me or you're not familiar with me, and my focus or my expertise is in understanding the neuroscience of human performance and of how we help humans to optimize and expand their capacities so that they can operate more consistently at peak performance, so that they can be performing at their best in order to positively impact their life. And my co-host here, Nicole, uh, you wanted to tell just a little bit about who you are and what it is you do and specialize in?
Yes, I am Nicole Roufs, and I am from Olive and Oak Business Empowerment Coaching. So I work with the small business, the business entrepreneur that is in the day-to-day stuff. So I think what I'm most excited about with this is you have that neuroscience piece, and I have the people that are in the and you do too, but like the day-to-day stuff that like we know what we know, but we don't know how to enhance it or to have that extra layer of support and the why behind it. So half the time I'm like, yeah, let's just do it because we know, right? Or we know why it sucks and we don't know how to get out of it, right? Or we don't know what we need to do to change it. So yeah, that's a little bit about
Yeah, and I think, Nicole, what really I think gave us passion to do this or to talk about and have these sessions is that we wanted to speak to those that might be impacted, those that we might
Mhm.
be able to help, that we might be able to support, that we might be able to bring wisdom or guidance or
Yeah.
insight to. And oftentimes in the world today, there's just such a bombardment of
Mhm.
negativity and information
Mhm.
coming at us.
Mhm.
And so we wanted to put out some value
Yeah.
without anyone having to pay for it or
Yeah.
anyone having to make any big investment. Just here's some insight and wisdom that might help you in what you're doing or thinking
Yeah.
about things a different way or operating your business and just offer it. Just put it out there. And of course, if anyone resonates with our messages, we are happy to
Yeah.
have a conversation and dive deeper and see how we can help you. But I think at least for me, looking at ways that we can get our message into the world and
Mhm.
make an impact is super important.
I agree, and I love that so much. I love that you said that because I agree. I feel like that's so heart-centered, and like you said, to impact and just allow people to apply it. Because 'cause you're right, so often it's like big steps, there's so much that you have to do to make little change, and, like, we can just move the needle a little bit, like, it's winning, right? So I love this so much. I'm so excited to be here and do this with you.
So we were talking before we jumped on to record a little bit about this. And last night I was on what I call one of my internet binges where I was doing a lot of research and I was just wanting to get in touch with like, how are people doing in
Yeah.
general? Like, what's going on? And especially as an entrepreneur who works remotely, it can be hard to always know, is it just me? How are other people doing? What are they experiencing? And so I just wanted to see at least what the big survey companies and the news articles, like what were they saying out
What
there?
were they saying? Yes.
And I came across a recent report specifically around the labor shortage
Mm,
and around how there's this huge deficit. So there's significantly more open positions than there are people to fill them. So even though there's a decent number of people that are unemployed, even if all those people were employed, we would still be short by 3 million people. There would still be 3 million jobs open without people to fill them.
crazy.
So when it comes to people feeling maxed out or exhausted or at capacity or over capacity, and not a surprise
No.
because there's not enough people to do the amount of work that we're asking people to do.
Correct, and then my thought too is, man, from the perspective of the business owner trying to fill those positions, right? The quality of the people you're getting or the people that aren't really invested as much too. There's such a ripple effect with that. It is mind-blowing to me.
And it was interesting as I dove into it, the reasons why people either aren't reentering the workforce or filling
Mhm.
their positions, and the reasons and the contributing factors. Even if we're still short, no matter what, we're 3 million short, but at
Yeah.
least you could fill maybe 5 to 6 million of those positions. But people aren't necessarily getting into them. And as I reflected on, or as I dove into that, there was something my mom said to me recently. She was like, "How come?" And my parents are retired. She was like, "How come people don't want to work anymore?" And
Mm.
I was like, "Huh, that's interesting." And she's like, "There's all these positions. How come people aren't filling those positions?" And I literally responded to her with, "Mom, I'm one of those people. I was in the corporate world 3 years ago. I was filling one of those
Yeah.
positions,
Yeah.
and I burned out hard,
Oh,
bad, and I started my own business and started doing my own thing." And so there's a whole subsection of people who did that,
mm.
who left and started their
Mhm.
own business. I think it was, like, over 5 million new businesses were created, like, entrepreneur type
Wow.
businesses were established. So there's this
Wow.
massive movement of people to get out of the current system or the
The
current
grind.
corporate
Yeah.
infrastructure and do their own thing.
Yeah. Wow, I did not realize that. That's amazing to me. That is when was the 5,000,000? Do you have the stat on,
I
like,
I
when
I
that like,
remember
last few years
it
or
it was, like, either during or post-pandemic, like, it was in
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
time in the last few years that there's been this mass movement to start new businesses, to start independent businesses.
Wow, that's so exciting and crazy all in one, isn't it? To think about that, and then, of course, like, my brain goes without, like, the science or the stats behind it, like, all these people are coming in to do these businesses, and this is where I'm excited that we're talking too, because maybe somebody listening that is one of those people, right? And they're like, "Huh, I thought I could do this." It's like the E-Myth. Have you read that book?
Mhm.
Like, they go into this, but then you just don't know how. So I think of us talking today, even like giving little things for them to apply, right? What are some of those things? Because you go from that position into this new thing and you're like a fish out of water in a lot of ways. You feel like there's a lot of things that you should know, but you don't know what you don't know. So,
Totally. I'm 3 years in, maybe 2, and I I my I had so many misconceptions about what it would take to be an entrepreneur and start a business.
mm,
And
yeah.
although I ran big departments and I worked in the corporate space as an executive leader and managed big budgets and teams and all of those things, entrepreneurship is nothing like that.
Mm,
And we
mm-mm.
talked about this the other day, and it makes me think about why people moved that way and whether they all became entrepreneurs because that's what they really wanted to do,
Yeah.
or because they were moving away from what they didn't want.
Yeah.
That I don't want to, or I can't do a regular job or operate in the corporate environment or exist. And I know you work with a lot of folks in the health space, and
Yeah.
it that's even more difficult, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting because 'cause I'm actually doing a little side business on this exact same thing because a lot of the practitioners, like naturopathic doctors that I work with, like, they started working for somebody and they were like, "This is shitty. This sucks. This is hard. I don't wanna do this. I can't do this for the rest of my life." So they're like, "I'm good at what I do, so I'm gonna start a business." And then they don't realize all of the steps and all of the things that it takes. But you don't it's like having a baby, I always say, right? So you have no idea. You're like, "This'll be fun. I can do that. Everybody does it." And then it's, "Oh, man, there's way more involved in it." But great, do it. Just it's to have people around you that have tools and things that can help you and give you the why behind you might not be doing the things that you need to do, right?
Yes, and I'm a person who loves to get out of duality, get out
Mm,
of either this or this.
yeah.
Wouldn't it be fantastic if there was an alternative? If there was a option where I could have my autonomy, I could operate in a safe, healthy environment, not toxic, where I have the opportunity to
Oh,
expand and grow and be who I want to be and make a difference and could do it not being alone, right?
Oh my
Could
gosh. Yes.
in
Yes.
and that's really why workplaces or companies in maybe an idealistic world, that's why we would want them because it's more fun when we can work together to
Oh my
solve
gosh.
a problem
People.
or make an
Yes.
impact. So we don't
Right.
become entrepreneurs because we just or most of us, I don't think, want to be alone all the time.
I know I don't. I currently drive 50 minutes one day a week to just go be around people.
It's this pull of how do I find and how do I operate in an environment where I can exist and use my human talents and be
Mhm.
the human unique being that I am and not feel like a number, an asset,
Yeah.
a tool that's being used by a system.
I love this, and I think this is why we're gonna have such good conversations because it's like you get that, like, corporate preset person and wanting to empower somebody, whether they're an entrepreneur or not, to be the best that they can be wherever they are, right? Like, the tools. I've seen all of the programs that you have and the things that you know and do for people. It's amazing. It's so good. We so many people can have access and know all of the things that you do with that, but, like, being able to then bridge the gap and wherever they're at, like, just help people be better humans regardless of your status of what you're doing or where you're going. And if you want to make change, like to start to plant some seeds of what's possible.
And what's interesting, because one of the other elements or one of the other reasons that people hadn't returned to like or filled those open positions, a major reason is childcare.
Mhm.
And so there's a subset of especially women who figured out it was more financially beneficial for them not to work, and they could financially do they had the means to be able to not go back to the job that they maybe previously held before.
Mhm.
But there's also and I wrote an article about this, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago, but there's a lot of challenges when it comes to childcare that people that don't have children of that age maybe aren't aware of today because we pay childcare providers so little, like, we as a society, we don't value that in the same way. There's a massive shortage of childcare providers, which
Mhm.
means so even I always use my stuff as an example, but my kids are in a Montessori type daycare school, and they used to have hours from 6 a.m. till 7 p.m. or something like that before the pandemic, and now their hours are like, you have to be there by 5:30. If you are not there by 5:30, it immediately starts charging. And so if you have to work until 5 and you live 45 minutes from where your child it just
Yeah.
creates all of these challenges. And then the schools, many of the schools are having trouble filling, like, after and before care programs. So for,
Mhm.
like, grade school age kids, my son was waitlisted for aftercare program.
Wow.
And ultimately, because we work from home, we were able to just let him ride the bus, get home at 4:15. We're here. It's okay. He can play for 45 minutes while we finish our day. But for, again, individuals that have to be
Yeah.
in a physical work environment
Yeah.
until 5 p.m. or work certain hours, that becomes prohibitive. And so I think it's those traditional systems and practices
Yeah.
that lead people to say, I got to do it different. It'd be better if I drove for DoorDash or Uber
Yeah.
or and then I could pick up my kids when I need to pick up my kids and I can and so it's not back to my mom's comment. It's not that people don't want to work. They
Yeah.
are working.
Yeah.
They are making
Yeah.
money,
Yeah.
but not in the traditional ways. And that poses a real problem for businesses and our economy if
Mhm.
we can't fill those positions and the ripple effect that has on everybody else. Because the other term I kept coming across last night was we all heard like the headlines of there was the great resignation, the great reset, the great reshuffle. Now they're saying it's the great exhaustion
Oh.
and that people are just exhausted and they're overwhelmed, and I felt this kind of intuitively and for myself, but to see the data and the research proving out
Mhm.
that and for anybody who's
Mhm.
listening to this, if you are feeling that
Yeah.
overwhelming sense of exhaustion and you're like, "Is this normal? Like, what this doesn't seem right." You're not alone.
I love that. It made me think yesterday I did a post on like just getting stuff done. Like I had a to-do list and a task list and I was like, forget this. So I ended up like putting all of the to-do list things that I needed in a cup. Because I was like, I don't want to work down my list. So I just would pick one of the things at a time. I was like, I need to get them done. But I was like, I just wanted to be super in. But then I posted on my story and I was like, what's your best get shit done GSD strategy? One of the responses was, I take my leaf blower and I go outside and it helps me reset my nervous system. But that's the exhaustion, right? If you really truly like we get to the point where it's like you're leaf blowing because your nervous system is that wound up, right? And I think that's where it comes back to when you're talking about the broken systems and the things like things do need to change dramatically. There needs to be something different because, and not to say I love my leaf blower, don't get me wrong. Like I think there's something fun about it, but I think you're so right. I think that
Well,
everyone's feeling it.
and even just bringing up the nervous system,
Mm,
I did not know that word. Okay, so I
mm,
was a talent management leader. I was putting on training. And I would be willing to say that our organization, we won awards for the performance programs that we had and the level of engagement that we had in terms of people. The people there, even to this day, they're just some of the strongest performers. They're just
more,
fantastic. And despite all of that, I didn't know nervous system
mm,
reset, what stress was doing to my body. I knew
yeah.
stress was bad, but I didn't understand how my body worked, how my body would get triggered into these fight or flight states, and how just because I got some sleep and I felt better didn't
Mm,
mean that I'd actually reset and rebalance my nervous system.
right.
That even though I felt like I was okay, I didn't realize I had no concept of that my body might be experiencing stress even if I thought everything was.
And I come from the world. Chiropractic is my background. I own a wellness center in Minnesota. Like I know chiropractic, their nervous system, your HRV, all of that. And it's such a like physical thing to me. What I have learned, and I am a chiropractic junkie till the day I die because I know how much it helps people and I love the nervous system. But it became, I think, so for years I've known that lingo, but I didn't come to the application of like how much control I actually can have over my nerves. I thought, "Oh, a good adjusters, it'll calm my body," right? Like, I know certain spots you adjust, like, we are a pediatric clinic, so I know what it does for kids and AD, like, all of how that works so well. But what I'm learning now too, and having, like, more conversations with you and all of the things, it's like we have so much more control of what we can actually do to unwind our own system.
And technology to help us understand it.
Yeah.
I am a big believer in technology. I have lots of different
Yeah.
neuro-based,
Yeah.
neuroscience-based technologies I use and I pilot, and I only recommend the ones that work. But so I use the Apple Watch. I recently started using the Aura Ring, and the
Mm.
Aura Ring actually tracks your stress throughout the day, so you can see
Mm.
whether you're in a stress state, an engaged state, whether you're in a I think it's relax or restore, so it's 4
Mm.
different levels. And what I find so interesting as I watch it and I reflect on my day and different moments is how times when I thought I would be stressed, maybe I wasn't.
Ah.
And
Mm.
times when I thought I was fine, I was actually really stressed. My body was showing
Oh.
symptoms of stress and
Our bodies
strain.
are so amazingly smart.
And I think that the awareness that brings for me
Mhm.
as to how much restorative sleep did I really get?
Yeah,
How is
yeah,
my body coping right now? Does it need rest or can I push harder?
yeah.
And you can't really know that. I shouldn't say you can't. I think it's a skill that most of us haven't
Mm.
cultivated, right? To
I
be
love
able
your
to
word.
know that
You're
without
so
data.
tasteful with your words. Yes, yes, yeah.
And so just that alone, the nervous system and understanding how it operates, and I coach and work with a lot of leaders and executive leaders, and usually I have to do a nervous system 101. Like I
Mhm.
underestimate what people know and I have to dive into some of the basics.
Yeah,
And in my mind, that almost should be, I hate the word should, but standard training for human beings that
yeah,
every
right.
human understands how their body responds to different situations and how those responses that are not conscious, they're
Yeah.
totally unconscious, they're autonomic, they're outside your control,
Mhm.
are going to
Mhm.
impact your body, your ability to think, your ability to do, your ability to accomplish things, everything.
So is that our next talk then? So you can give that to people here if they need to know it, or do you have a program or an article you've written? Let's like what how can we help people learn more if they don't know more? Or even if
Yeah.
they do know something, like they don't know what you know. So how let's this is where we're gonna apply this, folks. What do we
Okay.
got for
So I will give the quick version here.
Okay, I love it.
And then what I will say is that the best way to cultivate your nervous system is to understand and integrate that awareness into the different elements or things you're doing all the time. If it's a separate activity or something I have to on top of everything else, it can feel overwhelming or just feel like
Okay.
another thing.
Yeah, true.
So my nervous system 101 that I give is that within our bodies we have these neurons and these neural pathways. And neurons and neural pathways are the nerves and the cells in our body that send messages back and forth throughout the body. And one element of that system is our autonomic nervous system.
Mhm.
And so there's the 2 branches. There's the autonomic that happens automatically, and then there's the somatic, which is I choose to touch my face or I move my hand in some way. That is my conscious control over my body, over what I'm doing with my body. But then there's the autonomic, the part that runs, that helps you to breathe, that modulates your heart rate, that processes your food. It's the things that are happening automatically in your
Mhm.
body that you don't consciously decide to do. And so when we get into a state of stress or when we get out of balance from our nervous system, so generally our nervous system is going in and out of a what we call a sympathetic or a stress state and a parasympathetic or rest and digest state. And it's going in and out of those two places, and that's where it's balanced. But when we get stressed, so I always like to say, think you're running away from a lion or a predator of some sort, you get into that fight or flight.
Mhm.
And then that is when your body is now in that sympathetic state. And that is now going to tax your nervous system. It's going to wear it down. On the other end of the spectrum, if the threat is so severe that there is a concern for life, that's where you can end up in the freeze state. And
Mhm.
so I always like to use the example of a lizard that plays dead, or a mouse in a cat's mouth who
Yeah.
just go limp. And that's automatically happens. It goes limp and goes into that freeze state in order to survive, play dead in order to survive. And so our bodies will go into these different states based on what we're experiencing, what emotions we're having, and the interactions that we're having. And that includes things we watch. So if we're
Mhm.
watching a stressful movie or a video or reading the news, that can trigger
Yeah.
our nervous system, even though we're not actually running away from a predator.
Right. Yeah, our bodies are so smart. There's so the innateness that we have to know these things, it is amazing. And I think, yeah, that's such an important piece. And when we talk about like people coming out of the workforce or being in that state of not knowing or all of that, like this definitely comes into play for sure. Absolutely. When you use your Oura Ring or your Apple Watch, and I know you have the studies behind it, are you looking for certain things with that? Or do you how do you apply that?
I look for and I use technology to help inform me and help me to increase my awareness of what my body's doing
Mm,
because I didn't have that awareness. I haven't cultivated those skill sets. So I use them to help me make better decisions
mm,
about what I'm doing. So I've gotten pretty good now where like I know when I'm in a free state or when
yeah,
I'm stressed out a lot of the times, but then it's still hard to shift or move yourself out of it. That's still the But it all starts with just becoming aware,
Yeah,
just
I
noticing
agree. I love
and
that.
being conscious of, "Oh, okay, these are states that I might find myself in."
Yeah, I love that. And I think I'm just gonna ask you this, and I don't know if we need to keep this in here, but my brain is also, "Oh, man, like, I don't do an Apple Watch or Oura Ring 'cause, like, of the," and I feel like you're gonna know the answer to this, so this is why I asked too, because I'm like, I don't want the EMFs and all of that technical, like, stuff around me, so, like, how do you counter, like, is that a thing anymore? I feel like maybe it's, I don't know. I just, that to me is my nervous system too, to feel, and granted, I have my phone freaking by me all the time too, but I also am like, I guess probably the value of what you're getting from it is more beneficial than re talk me through that.
Yeah, there's always a trade-off
Yeah,
to everything. Certainly certainly the great exhaustion is an indicator that we and this is my belief, is that we are not evolved as human beings to interact with and live in a world the way that we do with technology
yeah,
and with the things that we've created. And so the things that we've created, for better or worse, they're gonna have positives and negatives.
yeah,
Everything is that way. So the Aura Ring in particular is so low, like, energy, like, in terms of you barely have to charge it, like,
mm,
it's so small that it decreases my concern. EMFs are an interesting topic. We could go into that kind of all on its own. But again, with anything, it's a pros and
yeah,
cons. Like, what are the benefits? And for me, and in my belief, I think using technology to support us
mhm,
because we're already using it in ways that hurts us, we
yeah.
may as well use it in ways that helps us.
No, and that's what I love and I'm so drawn about you. That's, I think you'll know this because, like, my brain is like, "Oh, man," try to stay away, but then I always joke, I don't want the old lady to come in either and keep me locked down, and 'cause you're right, like, technology is evolving and it's there, and I just think it's, yeah, to use it and to help good, make better decisions. I think you're right. So that's
I mean, if we could spend our days outside in nature, uh,
grounding.
moving most of the day,
Mhm.
not behind a
Yeah,
computer screen, if we lived our lives in different ways, we wouldn't need some of those things. If we
yeah,
were out running the lion,
yeah.
that would expend the stress from our body.
Yeah.
The running and the fighting is what our body was wired to do in response to that stress.
Yeah.
But we don't have that same opportunity when the stress is meeting a work deadline
Mm.
or a toxic boss that just ripped me a new one. Like, I can't fight them.
No.
And so you know what ends
You
up
could,
happening?
but I'm gonna recommend you don't.
Yeah, and you know what ends up happening? We go find someone else to fight.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we end up yelling at our kids, we end up
Mhm.
yelling at our spouse, we end up running away, trying to find a new job, so we end up in fight or flight in a different way, but not in a way that allows that stress to move through and allows us to move beyond it.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like if people are listening to this too, maybe this is one of the things that we, or not if they are, when they are, like, give them something to think about and do, right? And to really, how does your body feel? What can you do? Can you go outside? Can you do a little bit more? We get so on autopilot with all of the things. It's, man, even just talking about this and having this conversation, I'm like, oh man, I have a break from 1 to 1:30. Yes, just get outside more. I feel like just bringing awareness and just, yeah, allowing some of that thought process to come in of what can you do differently so you're not so wound up, and 'cause the last thing we ever want is people to take that stuff home too, because our families don't need that, because that's what happens, and we all have been there, and no matter how much of a saint somebody is, like,
Yeah.
you definitely can.
So what I would end this one on, or this segment on, is the advice that I give every client, every person, and it's so
Mhm.
simple and it's so little, and you're gonna underestimate it and you're gonna dismiss it and you're gonna be like, "Yeah, I can't make that big a difference." And try it and trust me that it will.
No, I
The
love this
advice
so
that I
much.
give, the thing that I ask every client to do or start doing is to do 2.5 minutes of balanced breathing. Breathing
Mhm.
into about a count of 6 and out to a count of 6, or whatever feels comfortable to you. That's what most people feel comfortable is a six count, and do it for 2.5 minutes. It will rebalance your nervous system and it will bring you into coherence.
Oh,
And if you do that when you first wake up, or especially in these situations we're talking about in the workplace on your way home
Yeah.
before you get with your kids, before you get with your
Yeah.
spouse, it will completely change the energy of not just you, but everyone else because our nervous systems will co regulate. So if I am regulated, if I do 2.5 minutes of balanced breathing before I interact with my kids,
Mm,
they
mhm,
have less
mhm.
meltdowns. They are more joy filled. They don't come home to my frenzied energy and adopt it. If anything, they're coming home with frenzied energy and I'm
Mhm.
breaking them down to a balanced energy. So that's my advice. 2.5 minutes, at
Love
least
it.
once a day, ideally twice a day. That alone will
Oh,
start to change your life. That alone will make a difference.
I love that so much. I do that. I love it. So that's exactly these are the things, right? Apply. That was our goal. Do the one thing that's going to help. What can we do? Again, baby step. There's a lot we can't control in this world, but what can we control? That right there. I love it. This was amazing. So good, Jessica.
I love it. So we'll be back with another one. We want to
Yep.
keep these short so they don't get super long.
Yep.
But thank you for joining us, and we hope you'll join us for our next one.
Yes, absolutely.